Once again, thank you for being here with us. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for being with us. As we were mentioning before, a basic pillar that Fibra is giving to its investors is this process of acquisition and operation of hotels. This process of search, selecting, and analysis of checking and verifying if the current brand is working or if it requires a rebranding or repositioning, maybe remodeling and expanding, and finally the integration. We integrate it to the fibers or the fibras and its future development. And this process follows a very clear structure that we've been perfecting. And for this, we have an amazing panel this morning. We have people from inside of Fibra and also people from outside. Fernando Rocha has been presented already. He's our acquisition and development director of Fibra. And I would like to add that it's one of the very few people in this country that has participated has led in the creation of brands, in the case of Posadas and Gammas, and before to position brands like Howard Johnson. In his past, life, has a lot of experience in hotels. Francisco Salas, he's from Monterrey, and he is an engineer in electricity and a master's in construction and administration. And he was part of the program at the Adidas and is social of Simetria, which is a lead company in developing projects in hotel and is recognized in the industry of the by the main chains, hotel chains, because he has more than 20 years of experience in administration of real estate projects. I'm going to present Mariano Cobos. Mariano, thank you for being here. He's mechanical engineer by the ITEC, by the Tec de Monterrey, and he has a master in agropecuary companies, and he has great experience of two business groups in the planning area and diversification and acquisition of businesses. Likewise, he is a partner in financial businesses, which is Profit, which have a branch in Monterrey and Mexico City. Profit has more than 23 years of establishment and is very recognized in the valuation of businesses and integrated assessment and acquisition of businesses. Thank you for being here, Mariano. Richard Katzman, he's director of HVS in Mexico. HVS is a leading company in consulting for the hotel sector and tourism. He has been working here in Mexico, the U.S., in Europe for more than 30 years, including his participation in consulting groups and also linked with real estate. His experience in Mexico goes for more than 20 years. He studied in the School of Hotel Administration. He has a master in finance from the Warner School in Pennsylvania. Thank you, Richard. Angeles Corsia, thank you for being here. He's a partner in KPMG in Mexico. He has more than 12 years in experience in financial accountant and also procedures of due diligence in different areas, including corporate contracts, real estate administration, and environmental. Escorcia is studied law in the Tec de Monterrey, specializing in corporate law in Monterrey. Jaime Millan, thank you very much. He's a senior manager of PMG. He's got more than 9 years in the corporate law and administration, specializing in hotel sector and real estate, fibras, and consumption. And he specialized in Noroeste University, and he has a master in corporate law from the Northwest University, and he has an MBA in law. Rafael de la Mora, who is our general manager of hotel operations. Rafael worked for Grupo Posadas from 1994 in the different positions. Corporate director, general manager of Posadas, strategy manager, administration manager in South America and USA, general manager North, and general manager Fiesta Inn, and also Fiesta Americana. He has a master in public accounting in La Salle, and he studied in Cornell University of Administration, and he also studied business administration in IMPADE. Bienvenido. Welcome. I would like to ask some themes to the panelists and then give you all the opportunity to participate with your questions. For Fernando, which are the means where we can spot a hotel for its acquisition in Fibra? So I'm going to stand up because, okay, it is, because the podium is on my way. Okay, so there are indeed many ways through which we can find acquisition opportunities. It can be like we can knock on doors. That's part of our job, my team, to search in the market and see which opportunities are there out there. And we also have relationships with specialized brokers in the hotel sector, our commercial partners from the most important that we have in Fibras are the chains we work with. And they, a lot of the times, bring us interesting projects to evaluate, projects that they know that Fibra could be interested on. And finally, we also have hotel owners that look for us, knowing that we are in the business of acquiring hotels when, for some reason, they want to sell them. And nowadays, we are recognized as an option, a viable and serious option. So it's a series of facts that feed our pipeline. And once those properties are there, then we need to move forward in the process that we are going to be describing throughout this panel so that we can have a hitting percentage that is high in that acquisition process. As this process goes forward, we do it normally from the analysis to the purchase and the integration to operations. A lot of this process is iterative. So, para simetría, Francisco, what does the facilities expert opinions consist on? So basically, it consists on start a walk through the whole facilities, room by room, in all the areas of the hotel to determine the current state of this hotel. And the current state, it's not that they could have some years of age, but also the facilities, the electric facilities, hygiene, if they have plant treatments, more importantly, the roofs, where we can determine a necessity, a need, or the state of it. And then we develop a parametric budget because in some of the properties we require immediate investment so that the hotel can be efficient or according to the brand and to fulfill some standards or inspections. And I need to mention that not because we are going to or we want to buy a hotel and we want to continue with the same brand would demand less than a hotel that is going to change the brand. Here we would do parametric budgets because when we're going to change the brand, we change the flag and some things that are very proper to the brand, but we still continue with the same, even when we continue with the same brand, a lot of the times we need to update the standards because normally there's some that are not being updated and that implies important investments. And aside this, we check the normativity because normally Fibra is seeking to generate and expand. So from the point of view of the law, we we seek that it has the Q and K densities in to be able to know if we can add 3,000 or 14,000 meters more, 50 maybe 50 more rooms, and if operationally this is functional, if it's functional to span.
Just taking advantage of the topic, the fact of you getting out of a brand, does it have a cost? Like, I don't know, they're 5 years more, so do I need to pay any fee for it? Yeah, it's part within the acquisition process. So when we finally have a hotel with an existing brand, typically the franchising hotel contracts are granted to the property and to the specific individual. When the hotel changes owners, it is called relicensing, which is very common within the brands where actually you sign a new contract when you have a brand continuity, and due to the relationship with the brands there is always the possibility of reaching an agreement where you have a simple transaction. It is usually linked that of carrying the hotel to a current standard of the hotel of this brand. So this might imply a lower or higher investment depending on the operation years of the hotel. When there is a completely brand change, we might have different implications depending on the years that are missing for the current contract. But it's something very common in the relationships and partners from the different chains, because in the end they want to have hotels with their flags, with very committed investors, with quality, with the operations, with the image towards the guest. And I think that Fibra Inn has shown during this time that it's a great hotel owner and to face and to be the face of this brand. So there's a good match of what we're looking for and what they are looking for. So we have very healthy and productive relationship with the brands, and this is something very important within our model. So I still have a question. You mentioned the FMing is fixture, furniture, and equipment. F&E, it's all the furniture. It's beds, mirrors, lamps, any type of furniture within the room, and also in the public areas such as front desk and tables, chairs, etc. Mariano, what do you take into account to do the financial assessment? Thank you very much for the invitation to this panel. The most important positions, the most important parts for the financial assessment are pretty wide. From the expenses side, for us, it's the premises. It's very important of installed capacity, the amount of rooms that the hotel has. Something really important are rates and the percentage of occupation. Now, for us, we review or try to analyze to be congruent within each one of the premises. For the rates, for instance, and the other KPIs, we try to be congruent between the last year's performance and the one that we are presenting for the the second, third year in advance. So we review all those factors of income generation. We have the part of costs and expenses. So we see it from different angles, the operational angle or the performance angle, but also what are the changes that the new administration can put in place. Because what we are seeing is an entity that I'm going to be operating. So the idea is for us to have synergies. And so what we do is we check the feasibility of having the synergies between the entity and the new administration, all the part of terminology, costs, and expenses. We check each one of those that might not appear now and that they are impacting us in the NOI. We also check the investment. We take into account all the information of which is the investment for the real estate and the investment of the rebranding, if it's going to cost something, the capex, also the expecting capex. So what we do is a complete analysis, especially on the side of the being congruent. And it's important to have the operational and strategy part of it. We analyze all the available information that might be in the strategic part and the competition part and the fact of saying here we have more installed capacity in terms of the region or the plaza. So with this, we see whether we can support all these indicators. Richard, what is it about the HBS marketing research that it's performed for Fibra in? Hello, good morning, everyone. HSB is a firm that in Mexico and around the world performs market research that follows a methodology that obeys the regulations of the country for market research and analysis. So we follow a path that touches in different points, aiming to prepare a marketing reading and a projection of incomes and outcomes for a specific target. All the composition of the deliverable by that might take longer because the analysis very consistent job after job, and we're very specific for the works we perform for Fibra in. The whole process overall is understanding the intention of Fibra in when assessing a project and performing field test or what you were saying, location. We need to understand the economical environment, the relationship between the site and the economical environment, the conditions of the market in the hotel industry. What are the hotels? How are they performing? What are the new hotels coming? We need to take into account this forward-looking projection and what is the relationship between, well, in future, between the economical activity that we foresee and the hotel offering and its behavior. And we will also have a consideration of the type of project we visualize, its positioning, how is it behaving within a market context when you have different hotels coming out. So these allow us to have a lot of feedback and also allow us as part of the information that we have to project occupations, the average rates, and also the projection of incomes and outcomes. In terms of the incomes and outcomes, we also use a lot of information that we have from the hotels within the group and other hotels in Mexico and outside of Mexico, so that provide us with a foundation to start with to do the analysis for a specific hotel, this information is shared. It is really important to say that it is an independent study. We might have some feedback with the customer or additional feedback with someone within the hotel chain, but the projection ends up being an independent study or independent projection of a study. And gentleman was asking about the element of the public expense within the market and how does this impact. I don't know if you can tell us how do you analyze how much it lasts, the impact on cutting the expenditure or maybe the projection of the oil, lowering the oil price. I'm just going to address this and I'm going to talk more about it because I think that the fact of projecting future demand in a specific market. Okay, I'm back. We address in field with magazines and with hotel CEOs or sales directors in hotels, so with interviews and surveys. So this helps us to understand the behavior of the hotels, not thinking about regionally or by sector, but in terms of what is happening in field. So from the people in there, we get a reading from their budgets, from their future bookings. So this is a important topic. There are additional elements that come from local government representatives, such as the directors of economical development of one state or municipal areas where we go with them and we get a lot of information. There are many sources of information that we take into account. Now, we also understand and we follow, as you all do, all the elements of public order in the sector, and such as the decrease in the oil prices, or maybe a, any some car parts assembler in any specific place. So we take into account the behavior of a hotel market in a based on a year, which for instance is last year, and trying to understand whether the projections of demand and growth for the hotel project will be higher or lower on what has been reflected, taking into account all the elements that might reduce or increase these. So we try to understand the difference in the field or about the effects of a sector issue that might affect one point or the other, and the way of how it's the a delay or maybe a decrease in the oil prices, along with people of economical development, to understand what are the local points that will be reflected in growing rates for the demand of this hotel. I don't know if I actually answered the question. Who asked the question? What's your name? Jorge. Jorge. Nice to meet you. My name is Rafael. So if you have any the demand due to any effect or impact, in this case the reduction of public expenditure, is the word is market share. Who are you taking market share from? So we have 100% of these market share, and we should not lose any competitivity. And so we need to go out and see who are we going to be stealing this business from. And the second part is looking for alternatives or and opportunities from other type of businesses. Some saying, okay, the public expenditure is decreasing, and there will be a lot of laws and government business that is not going to exist anymore, but you have a great opportunity for political campaigns. There will be 5,000 candidates. I was listening to news yesterday that people from pre-party or I don't know they committed or they do all this show about this political topics that it needs to be like that. But there will be a lot of people going around, and during this campaign we have intermediate votings, we have municipal president polling, and people from Congress at many states. So we need to address that market. So as a wrap up, we cannot lose competitivity. We need to keep our market share, stealing business from other companies, looking for other business opportunities whenever we can get it from. I believe it's important to mention that many of our customers, such as Fibra, and this is one of our customers, they want to know whether there is an obstacle. And one of the reasons of having an independent contract are those elements that they need to take into account in terms of hotel supply and demand that might impact a decision making that is completely internal and goes further than our skills. So I think that if there's something that they need to take into account, or whether there's a market that they see, and sometimes we realize that maybe there was more supply than were actually it, and impacts the size or the timing. I don't know. It's just not my subject to get into that part because we are not part of the process. We understand that whenever they hire us, if there is bad news, they want to know it about it, and if there is enough evidence of it. So we are now going to move forward with due diligence, KPMG. Jaime, what is the process of due diligence that KPMG performs for Fibrain? I would like to start by saying, by explaining the process that we carried out, and we have supported Fibra before this, it went public on the market share. So it is a process of acquisition that is followed when there is a purchase from the hotel in operation, whenever there is an investment in the land to identify a hotel, or finally when there is a property that was acquired, we have a remodeling, substantial remodeling process. So within this part of transactions, we have defined in a very specific process, and from its starting, when we were invited to participate in this process, we identified three important areas as part of this reviewing process. The first one is the real estate. The second one is the management part that has to do with permits and licenses to allow the operation of hotel, and finally the environmental aspect of it, that that's facing the investors and for the local and foreign investors. And it is very important. In the last years, we have participating in 31 due diligence projects going along with Fibrain, and it's also, it takes a very punctual analysis investment. So maybe Jaime will talk about these three areas that we identified as part of the project scope of due diligence that we carried out, and maybe I would go back and explain this process. So, as a follow-up of what Angel is saying, it's important to differentiate what is our participation in it. And as Angel was mentioning, when there is a process of acquisition, we prepare a report with all the permits, licenses, concessions, and we punctually review all the state, federal, and local regulations, the NOMs, the urban projects, and for that, we go along the process of the reviewing. If we see any risks that might be an obstacle within the of the real estate, we raise a red flag, and we are in contact with the legal and acquisition department so we can legalize the owners of the hotel before the transferring, or they can take into account everything that we find out. In terms of real estate, we review whether the owner is the actual owner. We see how whether there is within a taxing process, if it's emerging, etc. We need to take this into account. And whenever Fibrain requires it, whenever Fibrain acquires it, there's not going to be any issue or delays in this process. We review the construction license, the use of land. We reviewed that everything match with the documentation, and if there is a mistake, we inform in advance so they can correct them, and to avoid any delays within this process, as I mentioned before. In regards of the administrative part, is all the hotel operations, the functioning operational license from the Ministry of Health, civil protection license, and from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, all the licenses before Profeco, etc. So we need to check and review whether there is any risk or if the property is not within the litigation processes that might delay the process. Like once again, so Angel was talking to you about the process that we carry out since Fibra in points out the target and all the processes. Yes, thank you very much. And here it's important to point out that it is a process that we've been perfectioning, as we mentioned before, or we've been mentioning within the panel. Nowadays, it takes us about 2 or 3 weeks to start this process to meet everything with KPMG for the due diligence, but there are 8 steps that we carried out. When the first step is once the internal equipment of Fibra has identified the target, we sign all the contracts, etc. They inform us who is the target. In terms of that, regarding that, we review all the federal municipal regulations to prepare a very specific checklist, and we also carried out a survey for us to let us know up to which point some purpose will be applicable for each one of the properties. These checklists and the surveys or questionnaires are released to the targets. Then the third step is a kickoff. It might be by attendance or by call conference. We get involved the legal consultants and the different parts within the process kickoff, and then we open these window of time where we gather all the information from the targets, and this information is provided to the legal department at KPMG. It could be at e-rooms or within a room with the parties. Once we have all this, then the legal department proceeds with the revision, and after this, and this is an important point we have been doing, is identifying, as Jaime was saying, through red flag reports or inform very punctually to the Fibra department the existence of any issue that might be notified as part of the agreement at the beginning, maybe the existence of any specific concession or all these topics. What we do is for them to let them know to take actions about it, not wait until the final report from KPMG. Once we finish this revision, we issue a report that as a global firm that we are, it's a standard report that is handled at any part in the world where KPMG is, and it's too detailed. We have an executive summary and a complete analysis of the report. This report has all the documentation that was provided for us and what are the most important comments about that documentation and a sanction part of it. This allows Fibra to determine the materiality on some findings that we had in one of these 3 areas that we mentioned at the beginning, to determine which would be the impact in terms of economical fees or sanctions. As Jaime was mentioning, we have very important interactions with other consultants, with the Department of Acquisitions, with the legal department from Fibra, and finally, when we release the report, we have follow-up meetings to detail any conclusions that we had within our report. Your questions are welcome at any moment. Ma- So can you tell us the time up to the first time you get in contact? How many months or weeks? Very good question. The question is about how long it takes an acquisition from start to closure. Very good question. The process, I would split it in two big stages. The stage of the identification of the opportunity up to reaching a price agreement with the seller. This time depends on many factors. It could be very fast. One of the hotels we are within the due diligence process is this process took around 3 weeks maybe, and others have extended in time because it goes here and there and here and there, and it's a negotiation part of it, it's the fun part of it. And once we reach a price agreement, the time is 100% controlled by our part from Fibra and all our internal vendors and external vendors that are interact within the due diligence process. These times has been we have been reinforcing all our processes, redefining many things. So it's 100% measurable and controllable. It shouldn't be more than 90 days to reach from the time that we have the price agreement up to the closure of the operation. Thanks. So once you have identified the real estate, so we have all the decision of the facilities report, the financial assessment, due diligence, marketing research, etc. So if within the due diligence there's no agreement or due to any issue the project doesn't move forward in any particular situation, so all the expense that this process took, how do you put it within the books? This is an expenditure that Prisma assumes, and it is part of the business risk that we take whenever we get into a process, and maybe there would be a hidden, acute, a big problem, a big issue. So does all the brokers you have in the country act as part of Fibrain, or are they independent? We don't have hired brokers as Firing. We have no exclusivity with them. They are brokers that with the time they have reached us, and they just represent or they just represent the seller part, and they use the intermediaries to reach to approach for the process, but we have no hired brokers. So, which is more or less the percentage of acquisitions that you see through brokers? I would say that few of them, many of them comes from the relationship with the chains, with the participation of Joel at many of the forums and franchisers chains. You have relationships with the owners. So this thing about getting a broker involved is very a little part from the business. I don't think it reaches even a 15% of pipeline through brokers. And have you seen that people are offering more rather than what you were looking for to acquire? I think that there is different behavior. Yes, there are owners that look for us. I don't know, compared to previous years because I don't have this comparison, but there is a knowledge within the owner sector in the segmentation that Hector was mentioning of how the hotel behavior. So people start to understand that there are groups such as Fibra that we are interested in purchasing hotels. Most of the times is the expectations. There is a big expectation on what they feel it's the value of their hotel and what we feel it's the real value. So then we get into these negotiation that might extend or be reduced depending on how far or how close we are on these initial proposals. We do have owners that look for us and say, I would like to explore the possibility of selling the hotels, and those some of them do it through brokers and some of them do it directly because there might be or there is a relationship with myself or with Rafael or with time ago with Joel at different franchising forums. Just adding to your comment, yes, there are coming back someone that we what we did, we did an assessment of hotels, a brochure, etc. With this KPI of 10, there was many people that were saying no, not for now. But now we have a different posture. It's like sell me this hotel and do another for me. So this is a modification to the development or the project. So it's like come here and develop with me. So this been opening doors for us, this industry of giving the opportunity of sales and purchasing of hotels, which this didn't exist before. So we are educating people, owners, hotel owners, and mall developers, etc., to educate them to say, okay, there is a Fibra that allows you to go through a very clear process and very reliable process. So people are coming back that we saw 2 3 years ago, and Fernando fortunately is achieving to close these deals very closely to close these deals. So we have moved forward from the acquisition of process, the initial contact, checking all the facilities, the due diligence, the market. We close the market. Now we are allowed to purchase. Now we need to integrate it to the daily operation. So I would like to ask Rafa to talk about this process of the integrating the daily operations to Fibra. And I thought that was last one because I'm the new kid in the old block. So, but in the reality is I'm the catcher. We started with the Fibra in way, which is what Fernando does with all its multidisciplinary, his disciplinary team. I actively participate within this team that has to do with price, product, and the plaza to or side to determine the specific brand, whether we need to increase inventory. And after that, I got getting the hotel or the transitional part of it. And it is sort of kind of complex because first of all, if you allow me, if the audience allow me to talk about hard numbers and that I saw in Fibra that it was amazing. I coming from Posada, I had under my responsibility 136 hotels, 7 different brands, vacation inclusive, PE, limited services, selected, full service, etc. So 620 rooms, but never within Grupo Posada. Never saw the experience, the hotel experience. I have never seen that a hotel. Sorry, it just the mic is cutting. I'm sorry. We're talking about December, where you're talking about 15 days that you work and during that month. So just for you to know, and I haven't reached that yet, but and I haven't been there by then. But as you know, it's the human talent, the reaction time, the velocity and processes that have been established at Fibrain to provide support to this growth and making the plug-in not only for the operational part of it, but Fibra, but the different brands or the rebrandings, whatever we need to perform that, 8 hotels within a 20-day period. Believe me, gentlemen, ladies, gentlemen, it's a huge labor. It's just you require talent, human resources, and if we analyze all these 8 hotels that are completely different segments, going through different services and different areas of the country, we're not talking about anything else. We're talking about a big effort and work of a very high quality people that show their disposition, their talent, and what they want to do to grow. I really feel very exciting of inheriting this team for transition. Now,
So the transition part, from a point of view in which we think we need to improve and establish very clearly, is to have a work culture that identifies all of us. Equality culture that identifies all of us as members of Fibra, and members that I say I work for Holiday Inn or Marriott. That's what, in my opinion, I'm going to be working with Oscar and the operational people in the next months. I already have an operational philosophy already defined, in which that's what well, if you allow me, I'll show it to you very briefly. That's what I call, well, I don't know if you can see it for the webcast. This is an operational philosophy, because what I'm more interested on in the transitional issue is that all the workers in Fibra, notwithstanding the brand that we're working in, that they have the same culture, the same service culture in the operational philosophy that follows within the guidelines of Fibra, and it starts with the shareholders and all going down to all the people. And you cannot measure this. There's a lot of philosophies that ask, what is first, the guest, the shareholder, or the staff? And I say it's the shareholder. Sorry, I'm losing the sound. Es el micrófono. ¿Podrían checar el micrófono del señor? Because I'm losing the sound. So the operational philosophy that we're going to be implementing, so that everybody is identified with it, and then we migrate from the impeccable properties, our staff. It could be, this is like the fashion, but what I believe is, what is more important, the asset of the bricks or the asset of the people? And I believe that in a service company, we need to have the right people with the right thoughts and the right attitude. And thus, added to the bricks, this is the most valuable asset of Fibra. And we're going to be very focused on this. Impeccable properties. We cannot have any failure in our properties in terms of functionality, service, quality. Oscar was saying, I was speaking about this, if you maintain quality is always going to be seen good in market, and this is going to distinguish you from competitors. Sorry, I'm losing the sound here. ¿Pueden checar el micrófono? So the thing is, then in Fibra, I can't be selling a hotel room as a commodity. We're going to sell memorable experiences. And this memorable experience starts from the time that the guest does his reservations or his booking, from the check and to the checkout. And we think that we can only do this in the beach hotels, but no, we can also do this memorable experiences when we fulfill the expectation and the travel goal of each of the guests. You yourself, every time you travel, you have a purpose for this travel, and we help you to fulfill this purpose with speediness and quality in the service. We're making a pleasant experience of your trip. I'm sorry, I'm losing the sound here. Oscar was surprised. because last night Axel was surprised because, oh, I forgot the name, but I think it was Emilio and Estrada, and he was also in charge of room service of the restaurant, and on the and they really made me feel at home. And that was an expectation that after 20 years of leaving Posadas Group, I was arriving to a new workplace. And believe me, there's always this feeling of not knowing where I'm going. And they welcomed me and made me feel at home. So they made me feel at ease. I'm s- Excuse us, we're going to change the mic. Thank you. So this has been fulfilling. If people are always fulfilling their travel objective, then in that way we're creating memorable experience and differentiating us from the competition. This is going to be a very repetitive philosophy, and the great challenge that we have is that that's why the commercial passion needs to go from all the last staff, because the delivery of the commercial process is done at the hotels online. It's not like this bottle that before it's been released to the market, I grab it and it passed through 25 quality controls. But the commercial passion needs to imply for all the staff the this idea of fulfilling the brand promise and to fulfill the sales area in the commercialization area of Fibra. And that sale promise is fulfilled in our business. And that's which is very complicated and specialized. This is done daily while we're having this great conference and this great Fibra in day with our great with you as our great public. A lot of our staff is interacting with our guests. These are our anonymous heroes, as I call them, and they need to know perfectly well what we require of them in one of of our hotels. Because Marriott say they are our collaborators, but no, we buy the franchise, but they are our collaborators. They belong to Fibra Inn. I want to expand on what you're mentioning. They were asking which is our competition and how do we distinguish ourselves. And you just heard the essence of our competitive advantage. We come from hotel sectors and we would go on thinking as hotel people. So what Rafa was saying, that's what gives us that continuous advantage. We know the hotel sector, we know what services, how the guests need to be treated, and that adds value to the real estate and to the Fibra. And that gives us a competitive and sustained advantage. And there's very few competitive advantages in our business. As you may know, you should know, all the people that have worked in hotels is very repetitive. Tomorrow, a hotel chain, like Oscar was saying here with his iPhone, he can come and open his room. Tomorrow, everybody's going to have that. Technology goes leaps and bounds. And for many years in Posadas, I focused to find competitive advantages that are difficult to replicate. And the only one that I found, it's people, the staff. There's where we need to differentiate from other people. And we have other opportunities compared to other chains. The fact that we can convert ourselves in a company that is highly aspirational to be able to recruit the best people in the industry because we have a great differentiation with other chains. So here you can learn from different international chain. People can be working in Starwood and then tomorrow in a Hilton and then in a Marriott, and that possibility to become a general manager, multi-brand general manager like I did. Believe me, nobody has it. So we needed to identify these advantages that Fibra offers and nobody is offering and start to communicate them and tell everybody, hey, we're going towards the hashtag. Sorry, well, now social media is very trendy. So we are a hotel people and we are proudly Fibra Inn. Thank you, Rafa. There's a question that was done previously for you in the part of the increase of income and rates. How do you fight this? So this is clear. The 6% is clear. I'm not afraid of it. I'm honest about it. So how can we do it in a very tangible way? We need to exploit in a greater way the channels. Your name, sorry? Is Tofik? It's a pleasure. I'm Raphael. What we need to do, in my opinion, to arrive to that 6% further on of the work that we're doing, to exploit the e-commerce like the distribution channels that the international chains have, and we need to be closer to them. We need to be chasing them constantly because these are distribution channels that are cheaper than the ones we can have. In a lot of segments, the segments of our business, we have third parties. We have the travel agencies. If you go to American Express, they're going to put you in a plan which they're going to charge you and they're not going to pay us, but they're going to say, book me through a GDS, and that's expensive. And so there's a whole pyramid of the rate, and it's a very little part that arrives to the hotel. So not only to fulfill with the 6% that the general manager of the company is telling us, is to exploit and use the distribution channels. For example, the website that all the brands have, and that's the cheapest channel, and the loyalty program that the international chains have, and that's another advantage against the national chains, which is also very expensive, very cheap, and to use them more, do more digital marketing. Be on the social media, on TripAdvisor. One goal that we have is that all our hotels need to be at the top 10 in TripAdvisor, and thus it's going to bring us not only the 6%. I'm not afraid of it. I'm telling it to Oscar and in front of you and publicly, and it's recorded, so I can't back down. But I'm sure we're going to arrive to that 6 and maybe more, and we're restructuring the commercial area with greater presence in Mexico City, which is our greatest market, to arrive to that 6%. And of course, we can go even further. And you touched on the subject, and I'm honest with you, I haven't been very in-depth with. We do need to see the segmentation and probably make some changes in the mix. I had the opportunity to see the hotel that we have here in Coyoacán, in Tlalpan. And of course, if you make a little fine-tuning to the mix, the rate can go up and immediately. Maybe we're going to depend less on groups and start to work in the business individual, which is going to pay you a greater rate. In addition to the 6%, you can maybe make a 0.1 or 0.5% without any problem. Is that clear? Thank you very much. I want to go back to Fernando with another question. What's the criteria to determine a change in brand or rebrand in the location? Is it the location, the addition of rooms, or the remodeling of the hotel? Speaking of this, there's an input that's, well, I would say two inputs are for us are very critical to arrive to a decision or to understand which possibilities do we have to expand or make a change of brand. One is the result of the market study that HVS gives us, part of the due diligence process, and there we understand if the hotel has the right features to be more competitive in the markets. And normally, we prefer, well, that's my personal opinion. I think it's better for us to buy hotels that already have an international brand. Why? Because these hotels are positioned in the market and they've been more surveilled, speaking about the standards and the capex and the quality of facilities, which is part of what more brands add to us. There's this demanding, and that gives us a better product. So the first thing we say is to see if the brand is the correct, and we use the input of HVS for that. And on the other side, all the interaction that we have in the due diligence process with our operational area, at the end of it, as Rafa was saying, they are the ones that catch all this process, all the analysis, the projection, the evaluation, etc. At the end, the people that are going to execute so that we arrive to that number is the area of operations. So they also need to tell us, hey, this hotel has opportunities if we do a rebranding or if we expand it. And to expand, there's different areas. Speaking about synergies of operation and economies of scale, the hotels that are smaller, they tend to be less efficient in their cost structures. The hotels that have more rooms, they have a greater profitability, and we also have a greater challenge to be able to have them booked. We also have to watch the behavior of supply and demand to the future. But we prefer when we buy a small hotel, as I was mentioning in the previous presentation, in the case of Altamira Holiday Inn, we bought it with 100 rooms, and we had around June, we're going to expand to 105 more rooms. That's going to allow us to grab a lot more of the market and be more competitive in the group segments, which we are limited because of the size of the hotel, and allows us to go tap into those new market that maybe currently this hotel hasn't been successful because it doesn't have the physical capacity to attend this market or to serve this market. And speaking about a brand or a rebrand or a change of brand, this we saw in the Mexico Plaza hotels as an example that I mentioned in my presentation. That's a regional change in the central zone of the country. And what we really saw is that to be able to give them a boost, we had to add them or affiliate them to an international market. In this case, we selected Wyndham Garden brand, and we've seen better results in these hotels because why? Because we connected them to the world of distribution, all that distribution channel with features, competitive websites, and loyalty programs. And this gives us the opportunity to not only fulfill with the expectations of the evaluation that was made, but also exceed them. And this is a decision that is not taken from the acquisition and development only. That's a decision that is taken into account a lot of elements, market research, and the profile of the offered in the marketplace. If we have a lot of brands present, then you also have a smaller range. If there's a location where there's not a lot of brands, you can make a cherry picking and check which is the best brand that's going to adapt to this market and product. And finally, when we speak about a new development, well, you have a blank page, and you basically are defining the location. Once you do that, you're going to start to understand, as I was saying in my presentation, which is the ideal product with the ideal brand and the ideal location, and the development cost that is ideal. And all those elements have to do with that decision. Then once we arrive to an internal consensus or agreement, I think also that one thing that distinguishes Fibra is the velocity, the speediness of arriving to that decision. Once we have all the information, we make the decision and we shoot, and then we move forward with the decision in all our areas, or committed to all our areas of business. To expand on that, I think is very timely what Fernando just mentioned, and with very hard facts, which finally that's what counts. The rebranding that you're speaking of in Leon from a local brand like Mexico Plaza, that we made it into Wyndham Garden, that gave us a consequence of a 15% growth in RevPAR. Okay, in income per room or effective rate. But we only grew 5% in occupation, and once again we used the rate strategy, less by volume, and the growth in rate in total, or the RevPAR, was 15%. That's great. And I'm also going to there, if you allow me, to share with you another example. And not speaking from Fibra because I lived this example when I was in Posadas group. And I'm going to share you with the why. And maybe Joel can correct me. There was a great rebranding that Fibra did in, I think, 2013. I think it was Wyndham Monterrey Valle to Holiday in Monterrey Valle. And I don't know what was the strategic decision, but I think that the conclusion is great. And it has to do with a lot with Fernando was said. What's the perfect fit, the perfect match that you need to search in terms of brand and market? If you're going to place a hotel where there's the main corporatives in Monterrey, in the Zona del Valle or San Pedro Garza. So if you ask me, out of Fibra in Winham wasn't the brand very clearly. You had to go with a greater positioned mark brand, and the success of that decision. I'm sorry, I left this. I left this on the next door store because for the first time we had made the decision in Posadas that we had totally closed a hotel. We invested a great deal of money, and then we changed the whole concept. It was Fiesta in Monterrey Valle, maybe 1 kilometer from Holiday in Monterrey Valle, and we believed that we were able to compete with Holiday in Valle. And the truth is, up to now, that hotel, that Posadas hotel, has not been able to compete. And that was his new strategy that I'm sharing it with you because the logic is great. Wyndham was not going to fulfill and arrive the rate levels in a corporative area, which is so important as San Pedro Garza. You needed a greater level, greater positioning brand, and there you can see the results. And let me show you about that. That hotel grew 14% in hotel rooms, 24%, and the strategy wasn't to increase the occupancy. This grew 8%, like 1 point something rooms per day, which is nothing. But the income from, or the RevPAR, grew 24%, and it has to do with the increase in the rate. Because if the occupancy grows very little and the RevPAR grows 24%, then the average rate grew more. So that's another success story from a rebranding to leave an international. It's easier when you grab a national brand and you use an international. Here you were leaving an international and you were going into another international brand, and this can be even pricier, but these are hard facts. You can see it there. That's public information, and it also speaks of a great success story, in my opinion, which, from what I've found in Fibrain, that needs to be shared with the public. So I just want to close about this that conversion that we did like a year and some months ago. So that loyalty program, we are speaking about Wyndham and HG, those two great brands. They have about 600,000 rooms. And the loyalty program has about 75 million partners. And I was telling Rafa in Posadas and us in Fibra, how many reward partners you had? 70 million. So those 70 million, a lot of them are Mexicans. They're competing favorably, and you can see the results there. And we need to remember that a loyalty program competes with high rates. It's not a discount program, it's a recognition program. And that, with the platform that gives you to have 600,000 rooms in other websites like Speed to Travelocity, there you can see the difference at the end of the day. And they haven't done that in the Bajío. Speaking about Wyndham Garden, that's a very good brand, and we were favored with that sector converting to that brand, and Mexico is being growing. So the messages are role with Fibra is to watch which brand adds bigger value to a product, and in some cases it's another brand, as we just mentioned. But we are totally married to believe in all the values of the brands. So the strategy is to be a brand agnostic. We like them all. We like the brands that give us results, and we're not married with anyone. We want to work with all of them, and that range allows us to find the perfect match all the time once we do the whole assessment. Any comment or question? I would like to go on with the question that we were done about the financial assessment. Mariano from Profit was mentioning, when do we do an internal and when do we do an external assessment, and how does this work? So the internal valuation, basically what we do is to evaluate the history match and the prognostic or the forecast or the future projection. Technically, at the end of it, we buy bricks, so we buy beds and assets and all the real estate of the hotel. But in reality, what we are acquiring is the cash flows. And whereas there's a great difference between the reposition against the expected value to be able to close, as well as then we are not buying to the right price. And we don't have an opportunity to develop it. And that evaluation, we do it internally based on benchmarks that we have, information, a lot of the times depending on the size of the operation or the potential size of the operation. We start the market research to start to understand the dynamics of that location. We have hotels a lot of the times with the same brand in other locations that can have a similar behavior, and all that information we use it to run an evaluation model internally to be able to arrive to estimate value of that hotel. And after this, once we agree on a price, general means with that owner, that's when we, in the process of due diligence, we do an external evaluation through Mariano and his team. And I will let you expand on that so that you can explain to us about that process.
So in this case, definitely from this evaluation or assessment that we do is with all the information we get. Can you listen to me? Hello? So we get all the available information that is within Fibra internally speaking, and what what we do is we perform some exercises, and this is just starting from scratch. So it's just running an analysis from profit, from incomes, expenditures, etc. So what we do is the purchasing process. It's sort of delicate, I would say, and through the experience that we have had, we have had the opportunity of having different projects, and we have found everything. We have faced everything. So Fibra has a strategy in terms of acquisitions, and it has a very important challenge of not being wrong in one acquisition, because it is very sensitive to be wrong about a 30 acquisition. If the risk is just triggered, then this can just result in a very different outcomes. So based on our experience, what we do is we try to review every single detail, all the part of income generation, cost generation, expenses generation, etc. So we do understand that for this case, many of the prospects for the acquisition comes from very personal, familiar administration. So usually the operational standards that families that own hotels might be very, very different from a professional standardization that Fibra Inn carries out. For instance, on the working part, families and the particular owner, entrepreneur that handles its business very personally can adopt management personnel systems that are very different, that might generate some risks. So we have encountered different situations, and we try to input all this. So it's our objective is not validating. We are not experts in terms of hotel industry, but we do have the methodology. And applying the methodology of business assessments, we have found out that sharing it with the internal part of Fibrain then creates an added value. Sometimes, eventually, there are some aspects that they think it's one way, and maybe they didn't take into consideration other things that might be important. So we reach a consensus, and what we have seen is that we find a tuned product that in the end what it's aiming is the evaluation to be correct, to be right, to take all aspects into account to reduce this risk. We have a question. Go ahead. Thank you again. So I have three questions, if you allow me to do so. First of all, can you tell us about when acquiring, what happens with the labor asset, labor liability? So how do you go through the labor liability? So do you do some savings or something, and how do you address this? And the second is, do you see in short or long term expanding yourselves to foreign countries, or are you going to just go domestic? And the other part is just rebranding from one franchise into another one. The franchiser, the fact of holidaying, providing you a brand, does it require specific objectives like opening 5 holidays in the following 5 years, or do you get any penalties from moving from one brand into another? Because in the end, the franchiser wants to develop its brand, and maybe getting out of there is just not profitable enough of being just changing from one brand into another. It's just like any other franchise. Okay, good. So I'm going to address this part of the international uh, expectations, as the fiscal and the regulations do not allow us to act as Fibra in the foreign countries. We would like to do so. We've seen the American markets with great potential, and we are going to be paying attention to these markets. If you can go to the labor liability, uh, what happens here is within the negotiation, it is established that seller needs to pay for all the staff, pay off the staff, and that's the moment when we stop and we rehire. So by then, we have already performed a due diligence, and this is to understand the all the template of staff and profiles, and it is from completely rehiring of the whole staff, or some complete rehiring plus some positions that you might need that the previous owner didn't have, or a partial hiring because maybe there was too many people hired previously. So it is part of the process, and it is well understood in the process where you need to get the hotel completely without any staff, because we need to look for people. We don't have to look for people because they know the hotel, etc., and we want them to be with us. So that's not a wood business. That's part of it. It's them. It's a very important and critical part of our process is the staff. But from the legal perspective, it's a very important and non-negotiable aspect of it. So regarding brands, at the end of the day, we are an entity that we're continuing growing, and overall growing with all our brands. So I definitely understand that one brand might be hurted by taking his brand out and maybe taking another one, but that might happen at any case. Is something that they understand. So far, we don't have any fees. Hopefully, we don't get this idea into their minds, but I believe it's a very healthy working relationship. This diversity of brands, we have this great portfolio, and I would say this great relationship that we have with all the chains we're working with, and they allow us to do things the right way from the commercial and judicial perspective, and making the decisions that are beneficial to the product, the business, the stakeholders from Fibras. And this is where we rebrand. And a rebranding, it implies many things. It's not just by putting one name and then another. No, it goes from different things, investment, etc. But when we see ROIs with 44% or 15% for some cases, so this tells us that we made the right decisions. And on the other hand, the increasing cost and the hotel conversion is assumed very rapidly. Thank you for your questions. Very welcome for your questions. Questions for Mr. Salas of Symmetria. What are the criteria you follow to calculate the reposition value or repositioning value of a hotel? To be very brief, the criteria is only to determine the same meters that were built in the same dimensions with the same technology, whether we like it or not, with the same level, same heights, same layout. So it has to be exactly the same that is built to current price. That's exactly the criteria. I believe that in the past, our experience and due diligence and when taking operations, I think that when we have facing some mistakes and calculations specifically is on the technology part of it. You might say that technology in hotels that you have the bandwidth and you have mobile devices per guest, etc. But when we acquire the hotel, then you have private virtual networking and different bandwidth, etc. So I believe this is completely unexpected. So technology is changing just amazingly. And one thing is the connectivity within our systems, all the booking and etc. That is so sophisticated. It requires more software, more firewalling, more bandwidth, more antivirus, etc. And the other part is what the guest wants, the availability of information, the privacy, etc. I was mentioning some people in the chains that they should let us charge by stages, because I can give you okay, first the basic internet and I don't know, just it's really hard, this issue of the bandwidth. It's just amazing how this has been changed. So I have no specific questions. If someone wants to say something, okay. So I would like to add something that I believe that from my perspective, it's a very important aspect or item within the management of this business in Fibra. And this is the management part. It's the dedication, the focus. In this case, the business structure is created by people that had many, many years of experience that are dedicated to this business. And this is something important. It can make the difference. You have had a corporate government that's very professional, meeting the current business regulations, and you have reinforced it with the operational part. We're here with a lot of experience and many commitments, detailed commitments. So what happens here? So this has to be seen as something that has any structure that is reducing the risks, reducing the risk in terms of outcomes of this cap rate and the dividends, performance, etc. It's through all these series of operations. And additional to this, if the strategy that they have is through the observation, is that they have set a very specialized team, internally speaking, speaking. And from our part, which is we are outsourcing, we provide our services to help them and support them. So from my perspective, this reduces the risk for them to have to carry out a risky or a bad investment or that might operate inefficiently. I believe that within this acquisition process, we have had the opportunity of participating for many years in it, and the culture of purchasing businesses has been very sophisticated. I remember at late 70s, early 80s, acquisitions were made very pragmatically. Now I see the acquisition processes with a very impressive detail. Due diligence now, it's not just performing an acquisition if there is not the analysis and due diligence of each one of the areas, the financial, the taxing, the environmental, etc. So it's just amazing how this process is now well protected, because that's how the experiences have taught us. Before, just to give you some piece of information, the team that was responsible for business acquisition was completely divorced from the operational team, and it was at the time that they had to operate the business and when they realized that they had a new business. So the interaction with the operational part within the acquisition process, it's from my perspective, is really critical and important. So I see Fibra in with this character, with the experience, with dedication, and besides being very dedicated, they have a great team to provide and to carry out a very good management. We have a question over here. So going back, Fernando, to this topic of on the first stage to reach a price agreement, what is the basic information that you need from the seller, and what are the criteria to reach a price agreement? So basically, the information that we ask to the seller is the historical information from the last 10 years. So we also ask for access to the facilities. It doesn't have to do with the depth of revision that Francisco Sala and Simetria team help us with, but I do have people within my team that are experts in terms of maintenance and facilities and standards. They know and interact with all the representatives from the area of standards compliance from the different chains. So we see what is the physical state of the property, whether there is a property improvement plan or PIP, as we know it, like that is already established for that chain, to start understanding first of all the historical performance of the hotel, and on the other hand the facilities, how they are, and the investments that are already identified from the chain and from the owner many times that are needed for this hotel. And finally, with these ingredients and with also the operations department participation with future flows, we might put together a projection that includes the history, the projection of future flows, starts us to see whether the brand is the correct one or an independent hotel. If it's operating an independent hotel, we start all the discussion of what would be the brand for it in terms of the knowledge of standards, the investments, and we need to apply to it. So we get a model according to the cap rate we're looking for acquisitions. That is the 10.25% to the top price to be paid for this property once we also take into account all the investments. So that's our starting point to sit down with the owner and say, okay, for us, this is how much your hotel is, and that's when we start all the negotiation. Other questions over here? So from this identified pipeline that you have, which is the percentage that you feel that you expect to be operating internally, and what is the policy or corporate government policies that you have to separate the property management from the asset management and not be a judge and part of it within their activities? If you allow me to do so, I'm going to answer the first part of the question. So all our projections are based on us operating 75% of hotels and 25% with third-party operators. In terms of the separation, I don't know, Joel, if you can answer the question of saying what we do is it is a contract, arm's length contract, what it is as operations Fibra the way as he is mentioning is we are completely competitive to the market. In operations, we have the management. We technically here in Mexico, we don't have operators like in other countries that operate the hotel institutionally, which means that they don't have their own brand. Posadas, for instance, it operates the hotels with its brand. City Express with its brand. Group Presidente operates most of them with its brand. And for that case, if they do operate some hotel that we bought for them, which is Holiday Inn La Noria, and we're once I said that I would love to have a lot of operators that are completely independent, that would be like, as I mentioned before, that they don't have brands themselves. So Fibras, we're going to be creating this market when we say, okay, we have a portfolio of 15, 20 hotels, operate these ones, and well, we might go there. But right now, we do pretty much everything. Most of our hotels are operated by us, and we've seen in the past that this creates an added value. This NOI of 38 that was mentioned is comes from our commitment to the everyday operations to improve incomes and take care of expenses to add the highest added value to the stakeholders of Fibra. So once we said that we will be maturing this market to be the highest added value to our stakeholders. Any further comments? Okay, we have a question over there. I would like to mention something about this. From our perspective, from an outsourced consultant, when we project, we assume that it is a professional operator, high quality operator with an internal or external brand, maybe to the same investor group. It provides a control element, understanding that there is a parameter that is not within an internal or external negotiation, but is parametric and according to many indicators. So I think that at a certain point, structurally provides a checkpoint. And on the other hand, we know that we see different operations for Fibrain. We know that there are ones that are closed and there are others that they are not closed. The ones that are closed, I don't know why they are not closed. We don't know the conditions of them. But maybe the conditions were modified or something from due diligence, some indicator from due diligence said that it wasn't the best one. So from our perspective, there is a independent discipline that measures the outcomes of the opportunity within a forward-looking process and with a series of criteria, and that then becomes part of this whole process. But I think that we will expect from our customers, this one and others, that this element adds value because it is external and independent. There's something important to add because I think you talked about the person that asset management, and I would say that there are people completely independent from the operation that controls me as operator. One is Fernando Rocha that has do with all the capital investments and the conservation of assets. And he has a team that, additional to all the information that we get from the brands, their team, and it's not depending on me, but it makes sure that all the management that I'm doing in preventive maintenance and not to become just active maintenance is not reported to me. It's reported directly to the general direction, and all the capex I need to report, Fernando, everything that wants to be investing in my future investments, and he needs to authorize it. And the last filter is the general direction, general management, and for outcomes, I need to reply or report to the general direction also. So this is how the actions are divided. So me as operator of Fibra, I'm not going to be part of it and not to provide the outcomes because I'm not providing the adequate maintenance for the property. The Fernando has this check balance and he reports directly with engineer Calvirio. And also, within the operations, we have a technical committee, and we have 5 independent technicians that they have it regardless of the technical commitment, they can remove or cancel an operation contract. So we started with from the IPO, and all our operation contracts established this, and there is a part that will be monitoring that we are well operating. The good thing up to date is that margins are the ones picking for themselves. If you compare them with the rest of the industry, we have better margins. Our capacity of operation has comply with the professional operation, and this is the huge difference that we see. We are subjected to have to, then we know that the final decision is something independent from the operational department related to Fibra In. So I wanted to know more about the agreement with City Express because it is a Mexican brand and you are more focused to the international brands and it's a lower sector from what you usually have. So I would like to know about your reasoning of your alliance with them and if you're expecting to do more with them. As I was saying, in Fibrain, we are brand diagnostic. We love international brands, but we also love local brands. And we know that with their domestic brands that are high quality, we have a Camino Real. We currently have a Camino Real brand, and the agreement with City Express, we believe that it provides us the possibility of getting into different market niches that depend directly on domestic travelers. The strength and the presence that City Express has, it's great. I think they just opened hotel number 100, and it's a very important player. And once again, within these brand portfolio or brand range, we want to have the best options that allow us, due to the business model, to work with them. So we have no limitations rather than just looking for operating ourselves. And in case of City Express, as it was published, it's an agreement that it's giving us the opportunity of they operating some hotels and us operating some hotels. So it gives us this flexibility whether we are going to be developing a place, a City Express in a specific site that is close to an operation of ourselves. The logic thing is for us to operate in because we will have operational synergies in a way. So it is a completely different place from where we are, and it might be a very good location to City Express to operate, but in the end, is to have the highest amount or the greatest amount of options that establishes the possibility that we have within our analysis to carry out the right location, the right product, the right brand to provide profitability to our stakeholders. Any other questions? A final question? So good. We have a 15-minute break. So, no, 30-minute break. So let's be back at 12:15. Thank you for your attention.